The Crusader, a staple which many care about, and one which I have just decided to have fun with. While this build is very strong, even tough enough to be able to take on legendary difficulty, I decided to have some jokes and japes with the video. Hope you all enjoy! The skills for this build are two-handed, light armour, smithing, and restoration. Inside of two-handed you'll be wanting to get all ranks of barbarian for double damage. Then there's Champion Stance, Devastating Blow, Great Critical Charge, and Sweep, which combine together to give you an array of smiting power attacks with which to dispatch your foes. Finally, I also picked up a single rank of Deep Wounds, which gives a chance for great swords to deal critical damage. I have absolutely no idea how much extra damage you get from this, but I'm convinced this must be a perk worth getting. Surely some critical damage is better than no critical damage, right? With light armour, I focused fully on raising up the armour rating to the cap. What this meant was investing into Agile Defender, Custom Fit, and Matching Set, which does work with the Crusader gear. I made sure to check. Don't worry about throwing in too many ranks of Agile Defender though, as we're also picking up the Smithing skill to help hit the armour cap and increase damage from our weapon. In this tree you'll want to pick up Ebony Smithing and Arcane Blacksmith. While the Crusader gear won't be able to reach Legendary, Chrismere will, and that's all that matters. Finally, we have Restoration, which might be the best skill in terms of perks of the whole game. To start, we'll be going up to Expert Restoration, as that's the highest tier of spell I went with for this character. After that, there's then Dual Casting. As a two-handed warrior, it's not like you could still wield your weapon while casting a spell, so may as well always dual cast them. Then we have Recovery, which at second rank will increase magicka regen by 50%, and to make the most of your healing spells, I'd highly recommend Regeneration, making them 50% stronger. Finally, I picked up Ward Absorb, which makes wards you cast absorb magic when hit with spells. This character is able to create a ward while blocking, which is something I'll cover in the equipment section. This character is a Breton, meaning you not only get some basic magic resistance, but also get the Dragon Skin power, to make you even better at tanking magical damage. But that's not enough. We're also picking up the Lord Stone for even more magic resistance, and to ensure we can hit the armor cap. As for leveling with this build, you're going to want to hit 200 points in magicka, which means 10 levels need to go there, but everything else can be sunk into health. The weapon for this build is Chrismere. Mary Chrysler. It's Mary Chrysler, alright? We're wielding Mary Chrysler. Unlike most enchanted weapons, this one is defensive, rather than offensive. The enchantment here is 15% fire resist, 10% absorb magic, and slow health regen during combat. I adore health regen in games, and a minor annoyance for me is that health doesn't regen during combat in Skyrim. But with this sword, it does now. Yeah! Do not fear though, because while the enchantments for this item aren't damage based, the weapon still kills faster than most, as it's got crazy high base damage, so you'll still be killing things with ease. For armour, you'll be wanting to pick up the Reforged Crusader gear. While having a decent overall armour rating, I did find most of the enchantments to be a little underwhelming overall. You'll get 32% reduced casting costs for restoration spells, 8% better prices, 10% reduced damage from undead, 10% armour bonus, 10 extra hit points, 10% reduced casting costs for illusion spells, and 50% disease resistance. Most of these effects really don't make much of a change, but at least there's a lot of them. So while this set was picked purely for the aesthetics and theme, it does have one really cool feature in the fastened shield of a Crusader. This is the only item in the game which uses the shoulder slot, which means it goes on your back despite being a shield, and just gives you extra armour rating for free. You could even wield a standard shield with it too if you wanted, or wear a backpack, or do neither of those and wield a two-handed weapon like this character does. For a ring, I got the Warlock's Ring, which is a real unique item that is super cool. It makes your health regen 30% faster, lets you move 5% faster, and creates a 25 strength ward while blocking, which is where the Ward Absorb perk from earlier comes in. This means that blocking with your greatsword is actually a viable tactic to use, as it offers a noticeable level of protection. Finally, we have the least exciting item, a Fortify two-handed necklace. Buy it from a merchant or loot it from a chest and you'll deal extra damage. It's boring but important, just like hitting the like button. You have to do it. It's required. When it comes to quests, there's the standard ones you'd expect of go do this to get your equipment. To start, it's head to Fourskull Lookout in the Reach for the Crusader armour sets. Then spend approximately 500 hours fishing in order to get the Warlock's Ring. After that, you'll hopefully be strong enough to reach the top of Forelhost, where a special enemy is waiting with your sword. After all this is done, you can focus on quests and factions, which relate to the goals of a Crusader, namely helping the Divines and smiting the Daedra and their ilk. In terms of some specifics though, getting through the main story and saving the world seems like a very noble goal, as does ridding the vampire threat by siding with the Dawnguard. Even if they're a little insulting towards the Vigil, they still have admirable goals. Finally, you should join the Civil War and fight for the side we all know is correct. Don't fight for the other side, their downsides are way worse and shouldn't even be considered. Seriously, if you fight for them, you are a monster and you cannot possibly justify it. As a follower for this build, I went with Stenvar. He's a merc you can pick up in Windhelm, who you should kit out with the heavy Crusader gear and weapons. I'm sad to say that Stenvar was chosen due to an unfortunate mistake. The Crusader is not the brightest bulb in the bunch, and when they heard of someone called Stenvar, they thought it was Stendarr, and is now convinced that this gruff warrior is actually one of the Divines in mortal form. Feel free to add in appropriate hijinks to your playthrough due to this, although I guess that's something to talk about more in the playstyle section. In terms of gameplay, this character is pretty straightforward and simple. It's a strong two-handed warrior with decent speed, very strong defensive buffs, and restoration spells, which increase survivability and allow for some optional ways to deal with the undead, such as Circle of Protection. In most combats, you'll be swinging your sword at your enemies until your health starts going down, then you'll dual cast fast healing before switching back to your sword and returning to chopping enemies up. Things can be a little more interesting against mages, as you can block with your sword in order to defend against their attacks and regain a little magicka in the bargain too. Honestly, this character is a lot stronger than I planned them to be, due to the fact they don't really have any high complexity to them, so there's not too much to cover in terms of gameplay. However, this does leave plenty of room to have fun with role-playing, due to the fact I worked on this character on stream, where I can be a little silly and wacky. Things took a different turn than normal, and the story of this character quickly became one akin to the idiot hero. The Crusader is a character I decided to be a religious zealot, but one who doesn't really understand their creed, or anything for that matter. To explore this some more, let's head to the backstory. The Crusader clearly was never all there. They always seem to be in a bit of a daydream. From the time they were a child right through to their adult years, they constantly stayed in a semi-dreamlike state. The only thing that was able to focus their attention was the worship of the Divines. Where matters of the material and the mundane easily passed the Breton by, whenever it came to tales above Mundus, attention was given wholeheartedly. They would listen intently to the sermons at their local place of worship, and wanted above all else to serve the gods. However, the priests were less than eager to initiate this individual into their fold. They desired someone a little more conventional, who would be able to perform the everyday tasks that were required of the priest. The Crusader, on the other hand, seemed more interested in ranting somewhat nonsensically about the Divines for hours on end to an audience that always ended up as zero, no matter how many people were first listening. As such, the clergy decided to send the young Breton down a different path, telling them that they should go on a pilgrimage to a different part of Tamriel and preach the teachings of the Divines far from home. And so the Crusader set out on this task, gleefully praising the Divines to deaf ears, a task which was joyfully performed for a number of years, before a dream came to the no longer young but still not old yet Breton. The dream contained a message. The message contained the words that Stendarr would be found within Skyrim, but it would take steel as well as faith to find. Upon waking, the Bretons spent no time finding a blacksmith who could craft some light armour and a sword, spending what little coin they had amassed from generous onlookers to the sermons. With gold all spent, the journey to Skyrim began, but as we all know, a problem occurs on the border. This never seems to be a real issue though, and the Crusader was likely as concerned as we all are when we start Skyrim, knowing that nothing bad could possibly happen. With events unfolding like they normally do, the Crusader decides to start the search for Stendarr, and is drawn towards Windhelm. Perhaps someone there would hold the key. Well, this build was a little bit silly. As well as Venuke's Dragon's build link I put in the description, I'm also going to link the stream where I worked on this character, for anyone who's interested in just how much of the build making process differs from actually playing Skyrim, or just for those curious to see what I look like. I've still got one more build planned to make, but after that, I'm considering switching up content, so who knows what's coming in the next few months? I don't! Help me! As always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.